We talked about the fact that 2 days after he was assassinated, his beloved wife asked us to remember him. And I'm just going to repeat that statement that Coretta King made. Our family and Coretta and Martin's family were very close to each other. Indeed, in Atlanta for a good time, we lived around the corner from each other and spent time understanding where we were and what we had to do. At the end, Coretta, on 2 days after the assassination, let me see the hands of those who can tell me what day 2 days after the assassination was.
April 6, 1968.
April 6th.
Who shouted? Oh, tell me your name.
Owita
Owita. Last name.
McNeil.
Owita McNeil is absolutely right. So interesting that a lot of us weren't quite sure what was 2 days after the assassination. Think about why we weren't sure. Here is what Coretta said. He knew that at any moment his physical life could be cut short, and we faced this possibility squarely and honestly, without bitterness or hatred. He gave his life for the poor of the world, the garbage workers of Memphis, and the peasants of Vietnam. Nothing hurt him more than that humankind could find no way to solve problems except through violence. He gave his life in search of a more excellent way, a creative rather than a destructive way. We intend to go on in search of that way. And I hope that you who loved and admired him, Park Hill, would join us in fulfilling his dream. There is no other reason to gather to remember Martin Luther King Jr. unless it is focused on, Lord, what can we do now in 2014 to live in full consciousness of this man who always identified with the poor, with the weak, with the beat up, with the left out. And so we come together, and last week we said to each other, we must listen to Coretta. She invited us to continue the work, to fulfill the work. Don't just celebrate the visit, but continue the work. And then I also introduced you to another magnificent member of the Jewish community, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who said shortly before Martin was assassinated, said to a group of rabbis, the whole future of America will depend upon the impact and influence of Martin Luther King Jr. The whole future of America, not just of Negroes or black people or African Americans, the whole future of the country will depend upon the impact of King. And then what I wanted to share and make sure that you heard at Montview Presbyterian Church, that is the special word now. I wanted to be sure that you heard King with the poor, King with the garbage workers, kings who said, love your enemies. I wanted to make sure that you heard how much that sounded like the one who went to his church, synagogue in Nazareth when he was beginning his ministry and said, my job is to stand with the poor, to stand with the oppressed, to stand with the beat up people of the world. I wanted to make sure that we heard him say, and I have come to be with the captives, or we would say prisoners in our time. King says this, Jesus says this, and we are celebrating both of them. And the question we raised was, how do we move beyond celebration to following? Now, what I would like to know before our panel comes is, for those of you who were here last week, and for those of you who were not here last week, what kinds of questions do you have about what took place last week and what we talked about last week and what last week means? And what I'd like to suggest is this, that we take about another 7 to 10 minutes for the panelists to finish eating their food, maybe even for me to get a bite to eat, but you talk among each other. Don't wait for me to come back. Talk among each other. What did those things from last week mean to you, then or now? Do that, please. It is when we are in dialogue that we are most human. Be human.